Hey everyone, welcome back. Well, just about the time you think you can't take any more cold, it's time for February 1st, the coldest month. But it also means that winter's about half over. So it's a good day to be in the shop here. And I'm ready to have some fun with my new pot. And what this pot's been getting over this past week is lots of water. It's a really good idea to keep these concrete pots nice and wet. So I've just been coming in and spraying this one down a few times a day, keeping it nice and wet. Helps the concrete cure out and definitely makes a stronger pot. So one of the first things I did was I got this rock ready for my buildings because it's going to be like an anchor rock. So I'll show you how I did this. So first I had to find the right rock, of course. And I picked this one because it's fairly thin. I didn't want it to take up much room, and I only have about 3/4 of an inch sticking out on the board on these buildings. So the first thing is to get a good mark on there. So I just want this notch to slip over that board. So these little buildings are just made from 2x4 blocks, and they have a screw that's holding them to that other piece of wood. So now that I've got a size marked out there, this is a diamond blade on my grinder, and you can cut rock dry with it, but it does make a lot of nasty dust, and I am wearing protection here. So now I've got two cuts on it where those marks were made. And now it's just a matter of going back and putting cuts every 1/4 inch or so. Just like if you were trying to make a notch out of wood. And then I can take a hammer and knock those little pieces out. And go back with the grinder and try to make it flat in there, because I'm trying to make a U shape that's going to fit over that board. I'm hoping that this will keep my buildings from blowing over. Make them a little more stable in there. So there we go. That's how that's going to work. So of course I've got my moss all ready there. Be using that after we get it planted up. I've put a lot of thought into where the buildings are going, and in my mind I see them sitting about right there. So I'm going to work on the foundation for the buildings first. But before that, this tree is one that was left over from the ones that started from seed. I had a couple of them that were really stunted trees, this being one of them. So as a result, this tree has more aggressive roots because it was grown from a seed. And that's one thing I've learned about them, is they have very aggressive roots. So I had two of these trees that came up from seed that were stunted for some reason, and they didn't grow hardly at all for almost a whole year, and they've just recently started growing. So this one's going to go back in that back corner behind the buildings. So I'm using my same mix for this planting. Tree compost, a large perlite, and peat moss, about a third of each. So I want to get the spot where the buildings are going to sit. I want to pack it down, and I'm gonna put a little gravel under the buildings. And I'm trying to make a little road in front of the buildings that's gonna curve around them. So you can see how that rock's gonna work there on the end to stabilize them. I know these trees are gonna have really aggressive roots from working with my other giant sequoias, and more than likely by the end of the summer I'll have to take them all out of this pot and do some root trimming on them. But by then they'll just be one big mass of roots. So that's the main reason I'm trying to make the building so I can take it out. Because I know I'm going to have to do that because they just have super aggressive roots on them. So this other tree that came up from seed was even more stunted than that other one. It's been a whole year with hardly growing at all. It just recently started showing some growth on it. And that's some liverwort that was growing on top of it. That's becoming a really nice looking little tree. Happy to have it down front there. When I design these pots in my mind, I definitely think about those little round areas holding a tree. So I know the houses are going to sink a little bit, so I want to get a little bit more gravel under them. make them a little more sturdy. That's looking about right. So I'm planning on putting 7 trees in this one. And I'm trying to make the look of a little gravel road in front of these buildings because we were recently at the junk store and I was lucky enough to find a small truck that I'm going to have in front of the buildings here in a minute. So this next tree was one that was an early cutting that I took on the giant sequoias. And all of those other cuttings got sold at the market. They developed really nice and became really attractive, and people bought them at the market. So this one is one that's probably been in that pot for almost a year. So that's, you can see how aggressive the roots are, even on a cutting once they get going. So that's why this one is a little farther along than the other trees. The rest of the trees after this one have only been cuttings for 4 or 5 months. But I've learned from doing them that they have a great ability to develop a really nice trunk, even from just a small limb cutting. They've been really good trees to take cuttings on, and I'll continue to do cuttings on them. So you can see this tree is much smaller and has only been rooted probably for 4 months. And it was growing right through a screen, so I had to cut the screen out of it. So that's 4 trees. And it's interesting, even from cuttings, they develop personality really fast. This next one has a really nice shape going. It doesn't take them long to take on a tree shape. About 4 months probably this one is from cutting. As you can see, it's really getting its groove on. It's got a really nice shape. I like to plant them like that, leaning out from the pot. So this one could only be maybe 2 months from cutting. I know from working with them now that these trees will have a huge growth spurt this summer. And by the end of the summer, I'll be able to take them out of the pot, and then it'll just be like one tree. The roots will all intertwine. So I'm seeing a spot there where my road can come on around the buildings and between those two trees. And there's a rock for the other end of the buildings. So I've got room there in the front for one more. And I've got another one that's probably only been a cutting for 2 months or so. Another small tree. So there's number 7 going in. And now that I've got all the trees in there, I want to make sure that I've got soil everywhere that I need it before I start with the moss. So go around and get them all packed in good, and this is a good time to spray the rim and wash all the dirt back into the pot. Good pump sprayer is a must for this hobby. One of the great things about these concrete pots is they like water as much as the trees do. So when I water these trees, I'm also watering the pot. And it's time for the moss. This moss is all the kind that grows on the granite boulders around here. My favorite kind to use. So there we go, it's coming together. The first rain on the roofs there. So we were to the junk store this week, and I found this little truck for this planting. So that's where my truck's going to live. So let's take a good look at it. So there you go, my new pot all planted up. As you can see, I'm having a great bonsai day. I hope you do the same. And I'll see you next time on Bonsai by the Sea.